call this recessed meeting back to order at 6 p.m. We've gone through the call to order, anything related to agenda review that we need to look at. Hearing none, we've done the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're moving to the visitor section. Are there any visitors in the room that would like to address the board? Or any visitors online that would like to address the board?
Well, was that raised hands? Yeah, we have one here.
Who do we have?
Mike Campbell.
Oh, hi Mike.
Hey. I'm Mike Campbell. I'm a teacher at BFA St. Albans, and I just wanted to address the board on a couple of quick issues. Last Thursday, I was at a White House event for Vermont NEA, and NEA got me in the door. But really, I was there talking about Maple Run and how the successes of using ESSER funds and the different programs and successes we had with students in our district. It was Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine that were there. And I needed to and wanted to thank Bill and Aaron and especially John, who spent the most amount of time giving me facts and figures and numbers so that I sounded somewhat intelligent. It was interesting to meet and be in the room with 25 other individuals, 2 cabinet level secretaries of cabinets at the government level, and second gentleman, Senator. Senator Welch was there, and other dignitaries. So it was kind of neat to represent Maple Run and offer that, have our little corner of the world there. And I couldn't have done it without the help of the data that was here. So anyway, I just wanted to thank all those gentlemen and the data that we had to share. The second thing is I am the chair of the Employees Commission for the state healthcare contracts, and we were able to collaborate for the first time in the 3 sessions that we've done this with VSBA representatives and their chair, Mark Koenig, and we are having a 2-year extension on that contract. And the important thing about that is that the state board system is working with us to have VI look at ways to reform its system and contain costs. And that is an incredible change in dynamic that we really need to embrace and celebrate, and a whole new way of approaching this is to try and make a better mousetrap. And so I just wanted to share those 2 things that have come up in the last week. So anyway, thank you very much for the time.
Great, thanks Mike. I didn't read our visitors prelude. Are there any other visitors in the room or online that would like to speak?
Nobody's online for participation, Nilda.
Okay, I think Mike Campbell's heard that visitor prelude a few times, so we might be okay with not having incorporated that into reading it. Are we good with that? Mike, are you good with that?
Yeah, I already did it.
Next item is the consent agenda. Looking at that, we have the approval of minutes, the media packet, and staff changes. Anyone need to pull any of that out for discussion? If not, consent agenda is accepted without objections. Next item is item 6, reports to the board. We have a couple of reports to the board. The first one is the student board rep report. I can't see them, so are the students here?
Yes.
Oh, I can see them now. Thank you.
Hello,
I see
everyone.
Leah, Jacoby, and Cooper, right?
There you go.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jacoby Soder. I'm a 10th grader at BFA, and I'm one of the student representatives. First of all, we would like to thank Mr. Campbell for our nomination for the award we just received, which was from the Vermont National Education Association for our work in civil and human rights. Mr. Campbell and Superintendent Kimball put together our recommendation and nomination in like 2 days, which is super great, and we were able to actually receive the award, which means we are going to go to a meeting Saturday, April 10th with Congresswoman Becca Ballant and the president of the Vermont National Education Association, who is a former BFA teacher, Don Teeny. And so that'll be a really cool experience for us to sort of network with other people, and it opens a lot of doors for other awards that we could potentially win, and it also gives us $500 to spend to help improve and better our efforts in civil and human rights.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cooper. I'm a junior at BFA, and I am also a student rep. We're continuing to work on our website that we've kind of talked about in past meetings. We are planning to get it launched next week. We've talked with the IT department at school, and they've done a great job collaborating on it with us. We also are doing another round of interviews about board goals with students. If any of you guys have been to the strategic planning committee meetings, they showed one of the videos of one that was done last year, and it's just an interview with students about kind of what's going well at school, what's not going well, and how can this be improved. And we are planning to do our interviews this year pretty soon.
Thank you.
Oh, I don't have anything. I'm just here. Do we have any questions?
Anybody, questions? Okay, well, thank you.
Not really a question, but just another congratulations on the award.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and thank you,
Seems
Mr.
like a great
Campbell,
time.
for doing that, because that's amazing.
Absolutely, thank you. Next item is item 6B, and that's facilities reports, and you have those attached in your packet under item 6B. There are several of them because each school has its own report. I'm going to turn it over to Bill to take us through these informative processes.
Great. Thanks, Nilda. As John or Aaron bring up the PowerPoint, for those of you who don't know, there's very few things at central office that I really, I oversee a lot, but there's not much that I really have my hands in. Facilities is one of the areas because I think all of you know, but may not know, my background before becoming an educator was as a structural engineer. So when it comes into working with facilities issues, it's just something that I've had some experience with. So what I wanted to do is I gave you each of these reports. There's a book that's probably about 4 inches thick that contains all of them. So I tried to cut out pieces of the executive summary, and I'm going to highlight some of those. But really, I wanted, as Nilda said, they gave a report based on each school. And back in 2021, the legislature approved a study to be done to say what are the state of facilities across Vermont. And probably the past 3 or 4 months it's come out, and I put up some slides up here that just show from Channel 3 or from St. Albans Messenger that it's been estimated that there's about $6 billion worth of capital issues in Vermont schools overall right now today. So I thought it would be good to go through with the board as we've been talking about budget and where we've been, and I'm already, as I told you in my bi-weekly update, I'm already thinking about budget for FY26. What are some of the issues that we have that could be hitting our budgetary, hitting our budget for FY26? So if we can go on to the next slide, one of the things I'm trying to do is give you a real summary here, and I thought one of the things to understand you can see pictures up here on the screen of our 5 campuses, or 4 campuses, one of BFA and one of the Tech Center, and we're missing one from Collins Pearly. But of all our schools, we have over 500,000 square feet of space. I don't know a non-manufacturing space in St. Albans that has that much space that they have to take care of and upkeep. So we have quite a bit of square footage. In addition to what you see on the screen, the Collins Pearly complex, I asked Tim this afternoon, and he said we're right around 100,000 square feet in that complex. So we have a lot of area that we need to keep up to date and keep in good repair for our students for learning. And in this table, you'll see some of the ages of the building, and BFA being the oldest, to Tech Center, actually that addition being the newest, but the rest of them happened in Vermont, especially St. Albans Town and St. Albans City schools and Fairfield, back in the late 60s, a lot of money came in from the feds to consolidate the one-room schools or individual town high schools into one building. And that happened and built a lot of our schools. You've all heard about the PCB issue that's in the news a lot, and that construction happened right at the same time that PCB was at its height in construction building, which was in the 60s and 70s. We're undergoing those assessments right now, and all of our buildings were constructed during that time period. So SATEC, SACS, and Fairfield have all been tested, and as we have told the Fairfield Center community and the St. Albans City community, we have small amounts within those two buildings that are contained. And there is no harm for students, no harm for staff, but we'll have to be remediating that. So, wanted to kind of let you kind of get this whole idea. You'll also see that they did they took that 506 plus thousand square feet and times it by $250 per square foot. And when I talk to architects, we should be somewhere between $250 and $300. That's probably a little low to say the replacement values are there on the right-hand side of over $126 million worth of capital just in our buildings alone. And I've talked with our architect, Laz Gangas, who we work with quite a bit, and he's like, I'd rather use a 300 number there than a 250. So, as we all know, construction costs are escalating. So, if we can go on to the next slide there, Aaron. Within the report of each of those schools, you saw there are 5 graphs up here on the screen. But one of the big points these reports are trying to make is if you take care of the buildings over time and not have deferred maintenance, your costs will actually be less. So if I take the SACS, the BFA graph, what's in the upper left-hand corner, there are 3 things being plotted here. In the blue is the cost if you were to take care of your capital maintenance issues, because everything has a lifespan. Whether it be a light bulb, whether it be the desks that we have around us, whether it be the electrical systems, the plumbing systems, the structure itself. And that blue represents if you replace it at the end of the life cycle for that part of the building, you'll be paying, we as a district will be paying those amounts. And we'll see those totals on another slide. The gray represents if you don't update it when it's at the end of the life, those represent deferred costs. And they actually escalate because it starts causing failures in other systems. So as you put off building expenses, you actually make the expense higher. And you can see that in many of these graphs. The third part that's up there is the facility index, condition index. And there's a point, and these reports, this consultant who did this for Vermont said, when you get above where your deferred costs for repair are 30% of your overall building's cost, you're at the point of thinking to replace the building. You'll get better return on your dollar to replace the building than to repair what you have. And we actually show, you can see how, and I picked out BFA on purpose, and I'm going to pick out some other ones here as we look at these graphs. BFA has probably the most deferred maintenance of any of our buildings. For example, the new hospital wing, which is the western wing of the north part of campus, has a lot of issues with it that we haven't been able to tackle. All the windows in there are leaking water into the building. So water into a building is a problem for a building. It will increase the rate at which the building won't be usable. So, and we don't have the funds right now to attack that. I'm going to be asking you some questions later on, but we don't have anything allocated. We wanted to do that in the ESSER work, but because the escalation of costs, we couldn't attack it because we had to take things out of that project. As you look, I really want to point out SACS and SATEC, and they do it 2 different ways. This building that we're in right now, City School, had a big renovation in 2011, which cost a bond, and Martha Bree could come back at another date about the advisability of using a bond or using other ways, our capital improvement fund, and what really costs us, what's the best use of our money. But you'll see how many of those life cycles, many systems within the school, like an HVAC system, has about a 20-year life cycle. you can see how the facility condition for quite a few years there on the city school is pretty low. But then there's a big jump in 1 year. And many things at 20 years will, so probably around 2031, because 2011 was when we did a big renovation in this building, will start to come, those systems will start to fail. And so that's why you see that big blue jump, and you see a big jump in the facilities condition index. SATEC is a really good model to look at, and there are other schools and districts that do this, where when they consolidated at the current location of the town educational center, there was money put in the sale of the base school. There was money put into a fund and started, and now they've been doing it budgetarily, where there's money in there to do capital repairs on a schedule. So you can see, and the scale's not the same for all of these, but you can see how their line is very flat, then starts to climb, because that original building, it was a Catholic school beforehand, that center core, there's some things in there that need to be replaced now, but they've been keeping up with it. So it's had a lower overall total cost for the district. So I hope that's enough explanation of what these graphs, you just kind of get the concept of deferred costs more than if you keep up with it all the time. And where that is hard for districts usually is we need to lower the total amount of the budget. And one of the first places most school districts go is into that capital expenditures. So we can go to the next slide. So when you look at this, right, we have up here, we currently have about $3.2 million, $3.3 million in immediate needs that need to be done right now, according to this assessment. And as you can look at what it would be in 5 years, from years 1 through 5, would be another $11 million, 16 for another 5 between the 5th and the 10th year, and another $32 million between 10 years and 20 years, for a total of $63 million. When you look at these figures, and we talked with some of the folks that have helped with this report, they don't include all the costs, such as engineering and architectural time for all that planning, and if something, a good example is a roof. If you go to replace a roof, you have to bring everything around it up to code, because it's grandfathered into when that roof was put on. So there could be something that's in here to be fixed, but it doesn't have the cost to bring things up to new code. For example, in the building in which we sit right now, and I'm going to talk about this for immediate needs, the fire alarm system here must be brought up to code. We can keep it going as is, we're grandfathered, but we can't get the parts anymore. You can't buy them from the supplier. You literally have to get them off a used retailer, i.e. eBay or others, to get the parts to repair the system. And so they don't make them anymore. So if we were to touch the fire alarm system, we'll have to bring other things that are part of the fire suppression system up to code along with it. So it's not just the cost of the fire alarm system, it's the cost of all those other pieces that go to code. So just wanted to say that while you see those numbers, those are on the low end. That's my big on this slide. So if we can go to the next slide there, John, thanks. So if you start to look at those, what does that mean yearly? And all these dollars in 2023 dollars, but we're really looking at almost a yearly expense of $3.3 million. Anywhere there between that 2.2 and that 3.3 needed to take care of our capital issues, to not have to go into depreciation and depleted capital, and therefore we escalate the total cost higher than that 63 million. So this is what we would need yearly in the budget. The only place that we have some money is in SATEC, in their SATEC building. It's about $400,000. We have been the past couple of years, and when I last talked with all of you as a board about a capital update, we had talked about using the fund balance that happens, that with the voters give us authorization to go into the capital fund to do that. We have not had a year that we've reached the amount that we need to take care of our capital needs. And there are other districts that do the same thing, like what we have left, because we don't know what will happen with personnel and other unknown expenses in a budget year, that money then goes into a capital fund. That's very common in school districts in Vermont and in the nation, but it's also common for that to be underfunded. And I wanted to let you know we're going to look at the next slide. If you go to the next one, John. But we'll look at it in a minute. But some of these immediate needs that you saw in there, that we're doing in the ESSER work, these are some of that are called for. Is you can see insulating the south building, so the original building at BFA in the attic. We did brick improvements, especially on the new hospital wing. We had to do that because we almost lost the southwest corner of the hospital wing because of the separation of the brick. We'll have all new HVAC for the original high school because in the original high school, and I'm sure these students could tell you, and what it's like in September and May, even though we put window air conditioners in there, you cannot keep that building going. It has what's known as gravity HVAC, which is there are chimneys which the hot air can rise, and the way you bring the air in is just by opening the window. So we're back in late 1920s best technology. It's almost 100 years of technology. And then we have to add electrical service to bring in this HVAC and make it work. In Fairfield, we're doing a new control system for the heating and air handling. We insulated the whole 88 wing last summer and brought in new LED lights, a new ceiling. Many of you saw that last fall when we were up there. And we're bringing in new HVAC equipment for the 66 building this year. I'd like to say one of the things that we'll talk about later that was really needed in Fairfield is new windows and doors in the original 66. The amount of air infiltration and just the operability of them in the gym and in the classrooms, they're at a dysfunctional rate. I mean, Albert was talking to me about last week. He says, is there any way we can do this right now? And I'll be talking to you about that in a bit. So the next slide, you'll see some of the things that we have that are not in the ESSER funds. We need new boilers in BFA, especially I think it's the south side, but I could be wrong. I meant to write it up there. We need some HVAC piping, so the heat that we get to the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and controls. If any of you are in it, know about this, the old way to do controls for HVAC was actually an air system, where you would use air pressure to change how the system's working. Ours it's over 40 years old, and the last technician in Vermont that can work on it, and there isn't one in New Hampshire or Maine, is 75 years old, and there's no one else that can work on it. We need window replacements, as I spoke about, in the new hospital, and we have some minor roof repairs. Our roofs are in pretty good shape, but we have some leakage in places. And Fairfield, I already talked about the windows and door replacements in the 66. In this building, I talked about the fire alarm system, but we also need some elevator issues, and we're out of compliance for ADA. We can still use our elevator to help students who need those supports, whether they're in a wheelchair or crutches or walker, but it doesn't meet the current ADA standards. And SATEC, we have some parking lot issues for safety and for people walking out there, and we have some water heater issues that need to be fixed. And at the central office throughout the building, we're starting to push some of the code issues to be able to use it as an office building itself. It's that tough. And we have electrical installation, HVAC, lighting. It really needs a real overhaul. So those are things that are immediate needs, and that central office piece is not in this assessment. I just thought I'd put those up there. You can go to the next slide, John. So as I said, we've been using our fund balance to do work. If you recall, in 2019, we had authorization to do the repairs at Fairfield Center School. We had a project up there that was over $2 million. I don't remember the math. I'm looking at Martha. I say like 2.2, but something like that.
Yeah,
Something like that, 2 million. That was all done out of fund balance. So there was no interest payments paid. And that's a good way of doing it. Like, hey, let's not pay the interest on it. Let's see what we can do. The connector at that time between BFA, between the south and the north, is a bond, which we have. And that was over $5 million. What I'm showing you up here, and we're going to be talking about the audited fund balance later on. Bree will be presenting that to us, about how much each year we put into the capital fund. And if you look at the it says annual fund balance to capital reserve. I want to say it's the the fourth number down. Thank you with the mouse there, John. That line, we can see we've ranged anywhere from $400,000 in FY20 to $2.1 million this past year going in there. So our ending fund balance right now is around $9.4 million. you as a board had authorized for the ESSER project of $4 million. So we have that in there. So once we take that and some work that was just finished up on the BFA bond work, we had some a fire escape on the gym finished up. We have about $5.3 million in the capital fund that's available for capital work. So when I said we have 3.3 for immediate needs, and we have 5.5 in here. We've always tried to keep some in the capital budget, not always deplete it. But I'm going to be looking for some direction from the board in a few minutes. So you can go on the next slide. I have 4 questions for you as a board. I probably should have said how does our need for safe and up-to-date learning environments fit within the district goals? We've been working really hard with our community to look at rigorous academics, consistent policies to address bias and behavior issues, support services for students and families, opportunities for family and community engagement, and community education and action on inclusion. Where do you see, as a board, if this need for our capital, does that fit within one or many of those 5 goals? So that's one of my questions for you. And then John, if you can go to the next one. The other question is, what is the board's comfort level with the capital reserve level? Like, do you think that's too much? Do you think it's too little? How much do you think we should have? How do we address the immediate needs with the capital reserve? And the capital reserve funds have been used to complete facility improvements and operations. However, the community has suggested that the budget needs to be tightened up. Should these funds be allocated elsewhere? Should we use them for capital? The way the bond vote, the way the authorization from the voters is for capital needs or other operational expenses. So I give you this report to really start a discussion. I know we won't complete it tonight, but I wanted to let you know, I think one of my parts as your superintendent is to let you know where we have liabilities, and one of our big ones is our facilities right now. I would say that we're in very good shape compared to other Vermont schools. I just don't want to lose that great shape that we're in, even though if you look through these reports, I didn't give you the details, but there's pages and pages of pictures of where the issues are in the buildings. So I'll end it with that.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So in the budget we just passed,
Yeah.
is there not a capital projects line item?
No, there isn't.
So we have 0 allocated.
We have
for
0. We have some
this
projects that
next
happen in
fiscal
each
year.
building, and Martha, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so each year we do have funds in the budget for ongoing regular maintenance. And we do have some small project funds in there, but not to the tune of the things that we're looking at now.
So Bill, when you ask about the comfort level with the capital reserve amount, it's not like we go into a budget planning year saying, okay, we want to make sure that we have an extra $1.5 million so we can transfer that into the capital reserve, correct?
That's correct. What we do is we take what's the audited fund balance and put it into the capital reserve. We don't have a target for that.
Right.
And one of the things, and what you may say, so why does that happen if you're in a budgeted? We have to plan for people taking different benefits levels, so they might change their benefit levels of their current employee, or someone that leaves and a new person comes in and takes that job. We have to program for, Mike just talked about health insurance, so I'll go right there. A family plan is $30,000 on our side, right, Martha or Brady? I'm in that right neighborhood, and it can go down to $8,000 or $9,000 if it's a single plan. We also have to budget for things that might happen for student needs that are high cost. We've talked about this before. If we have to do an outplacement, that's much higher cost to the district than other things. So we put some of that in there. And as you know, the past 2 years, which will be talked about in a few minutes, so I don't want to steal thunder, but last year, the reason we had that 2.1 is we had staff we couldn't hire, that we had planned to hire. That was the main piece that drove that.
Right. So, going off your answer, is it's like, what's our comfort level? Well, it's not like we can target that amount and therefore choose what our comfort level is. It's just kind of like, how do you feel about the process?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, the legislature allows us to do this, as long as we put it on our, vote to use the funds for capital improvements or other necessary, however you worded that. So I
So-
guess I'm trying to understand what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Let me reword it a little bit and give you a scenario. So we have $5.3 million in capital reserves. And Martha and I have talked a lot about trying to keep that somewhere in the 2 to 3 million without spending it. So if I said to you, what would be your, we have $3.3 million in immediate needs. Real rough numbers. We're doing, pretend everything's on the back of the envelope right now. We're really rough numbers. And the board said, hey, we'd like you to, we're in a good place. We would agree that if you use 2 million of that to start tackling those immediate needs, that'd be a good thing to go do. So reduce it from 5.3 to 3.3. Or is it 1 million? Or is it use 3.3 million, go after all of it and reduce it down to a little under $2 million. What I'm trying to judge from you as a board, the collective board, I didn't say that well, the collective board is, where's your comfort level and like how much do we reduce that capital fund? Because it is also our savings account. Like if we really needed something and went over the budget, that's there. And you as a board, because of the way it's phrased to the voters, you could use it for operations if need be. I never recommend that because it'll make a double deficit the next fiscal year. Because you're using unrealized revenue. So it's always good to be using it for more one-time projects that aren't annualized. So I don't know, does that help, Nilda?
Yeah, it does.
So if we set aside, like, setting aside the ability to use it for operations, what else does the capital fund for, or used for, or potentially used for, other than building?
It's just been building improvements.
Okay,
So
so
anything
that's all
that's-
that the capital fund is used for currently?
Yep, I think so.
Yep.
Martha's giving me the nod, that's what
Yes.
the history's been.
So we have, just summarizing in my mind, we have 9.4 million right now, the ending balance. And your estimates for if we spend about 3 million a year, we would stay up.
So let me do a little bit differently. We have 9.3 million in the fund.
Mhm.
The board has authorized 4 million of that to be spent.
Okay, so
Then that's going in the ESSER project, so then I get to the 5.3.
okay.
All right, we have about 3.3, and I think that's a low number in what we have for immediate needs. But I know we have some projects like the sprinkler, I'm gonna keep going back to the sprinkler system. We have that all planned. That all got planned in the ESSER work, we had to take it out. But we could go to bid on the ESSER work, on the sprinkler system tomorrow, because we have all the specifications and ready to go. We have some other projects like that, the windows at Fairfield, the windows in the new hospital. So we could quickly say, if the board said, hey, come and tell us what $2 million it would do for us, we could probably do that within a month and say this is what that would do. Because the facilities directors, I have to point out, they're not here tonight. And they should really be the ones patted on the back for this. Because they've worked with the state and with LAS on all our facilities plans. They know what those projects are. They have them listed. I have a spreadsheet here that has just the immediate needs, which is kind of 2 sides. These are all the types of projects we need to do, and we know what they are. They're ranked, we have them ranked by priorities that the facilities directors, a couple of years ago, they all walked around all together, and as a group, they assessed every building as a group and came up as a group, like, what's the priority? And the number 1 priority right now is the fire alarm system in this building. And I want to state for the people that are in public watching this, because I'm talking about the fire alarm system, there is no safety issue with the fire alarm system. It fully works here in City School. I don't want anyone to be scared about it. We just know that it's at the end of its life. So I don't know, that was a long answer to you, Jess. I'm sorry, I kind of rambled, but just that idea, we go from 9.3 down to 5.3 because we have 4 million.
Yeah, and then if we took care of all the immediate needs, we'd be down to 2.
2 are probably under that, is what I'm estimating.
Jack?
Do you think it's a good or bad idea when we do our articles? You know, when we put out the budget each year, we do articles, you know, of hiring directors on the board and doing this and doing that, and one of the articles is the budget. But putting an additional article of capital improvement funds for the voters to vote on, because most of the time, in my experience, the public understands you've got to keep your buildings up. And they'll vote for something like that. They may not vote for a new teacher or something that they think is controversial. But most people understand you have to have a new boiler, you have to have a good roof, and, you know, that kind of thing.
I've seen that done. I think it depends on the community.
Yeah,
So I'm sorry, I'm giving you a non-answer, which is, I think it's.
So,
I'm just saying, I'm just
Jack,
putting it out as an idea.
Yeah.
Like each year, put something in as an article for a capital improvement fund. And just put
so
it right out
Jack,
there.
you're stating specific items, not just the fact that we have a capital improvement fund that's gonna go toward capital improvement or operations that's necessary.
Well, I would list what they were directed for that year.
I think you're both saying the same thing.
Yeah,
Well,
I was
yes
just
and no.
throwing
I
out
think
as an
we already
idea.
have- I think we already have what Jack's asking for.
I think he's thinking,
In the-
Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, you want a special article that asks for extra money beyond the budget to attack capital, capital expenses.
correct,
That would add a certain penny or
Certain penny to
to
the
the
tax,
tax rate.
right,
correct.
up and above the budget.
I mean, my concern with that would be if, you know, because a lot of people are focused right now on what their property taxes are. If someone just says, no, you can't have a new boiler, like, then I guess then we just wouldn't have the extra funds for the new boiler, then it would be, you have to come from the capital fund. Would that be correct?
Or from the budget,
Or from the budget?
yeah.
So we would have to find the money, it would be the town saying, or the district saying, or the district voters saying, won't give you extra money for this.
Yeah. They're not saying no to the project, they're saying no to the money. I'd have to check that with our attorney, but that's what I believe. So one of the pieces that I'm hearing some interest in knowing like what, I mean, by Jessica, by your question, I'm hearing at least some interest in knowing like what does a certain amount of money do for us for capital needs?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have the list, right?
Yeah.
And that's about $3 million.
Yeah.
I mean, my opinion would be just take care of the immediate needs this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like we should be budgeting for this though, too, in the future.
Yeah, well, that's the hard thing, it's been the downward pressure of trying to keep budgets low and tax rates low. I agree with you, like in the theoretical, we should be budgeting for this. I don't know many districts that have because they've always tried to keep the tax impact as low as possible. So this is why I really need the board's recommendation on how we go here, because it's one of those things that it's a big budgetary item, and we can keep using the capital reserve, that's fine, but also realize to the degree we're able to fund it, and that may underfund it as well. So I'm not trying to advocate for one or another, I'm more about education for the board and then working with all of you to say, how do we do this when we start thinking about FY26, which is our next fiscal year?
Just a quick question, I'm going to direct over at Brianna and Martha. When we were discussing the budget, rough number you gave was something like $1 million as a penny on the.
No,
No.
400,000 is a penny on
400,000
the
is a
tax
penny
rate.
on the tax rate. So, doing a bit of rounding, so, say we have 2.8 million in repairs, which is close to the 3 million number, then that's 7 pennies that, if it wasn't coming from the capital fund, we would have, if we would just put that line item in the budget, then we're increasing the tax rate by 7 cents.
Yes.
So hopefully then we would find some other way to cut some of those pennies back down.
And that's one of the reasons I'm bringing this, because I don't think it's the answer about the immediate needs and the capital fund, that can be short-term. But how we attack this for long-term planning is one I think we have to think about as a board and thinking about as we think about budgetary processes.
I mean, I'd always rather just save and plan for the future than be stuck and have to take out a loan or
Yeah.
or figure out some other way to get the money.
So I think when, in the budget cycle, we can start to, one of the things I said in my update to you this past week was I think we need to be talking about budget throughout the year. And I think this is one of those items that we should be talking about, a couple of times for how do we do this in the next budget cycle, and then as well, do you want me to bring you something that shows you about how we could attack the immediate needs with the capital reserve, or should we hold on that? And I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight on what we do, but do you want me to do some work on that?
We'll start. Meeting.
Okay? I'm just trying to
Are we-
understand.
It looks like mostly nods, is that correct?
My feeling is
But
the immediate
nod,
needs
yes.
need to be dealt with.
Okay,
Immediate needs need to be dealt
okay, so we can work on that?
Yeah.
Okay,
If I can add just, one of the questions is where this fits into the district goals.
Goals, yeah.
The two areas that immediately come to mind for me would be rigorous academics, because, 90-degree day in May, the students are gonna learn a lot better if the HVAC system is working than not. And also general inclusion, in that we're better equipped to meet everyone's needs if our facilities are not 100 years old.
Just a general comment. What really bothers me is when I go into other buildings, and being the youngest person here, I've been into major hospitals recently. They don't wait and watch a window leak. They don't wait and watch and put buckets under where the roof is leaking. They have nice buildings. They correct the stuff in schools. In my 15 years in education, we're all a bunch of worrywarts about doing the right thing about the buildings. Because I could tell you some funny stories, and I won't waste your time, but people, like Bill was saying, they put off getting things fixed in schools. It's like one of the first things you cut when you have to cut your budget. Because they don't want to cut programs, they don't want to get rid of teachers or staff. So they put up with the leaky window and the leaky roof and the boiler system that's ready to collapse. It just really bothers me that our philosophy or our culture is that schools can put up with problems with buildings, but other facilities in our community don't do that. So why are we, and I'm not saying this district, I'm saying education across the United States. So, I think we ought to just throw that right out to the public and say, this is what children need. They need a facility that takes care of the heat, the air conditioning, the leaky roof, the this or that, the boiler system. It just needs to be done, and I commend Bill and the staff for presenting these slides and showing us what really needs to be done. And I think it's our job to put it right out there. And I'm an idealist, but I think it's important for kids and staff, while they work in the buildings, to have good buildings. And I think the community understands that. I've found beyond almost everything in education, everybody understands a leaky roof, or a boiler system that doesn't work. They may not understand why you need a new English curriculum or language program or computer this or They may not understand those things, but they understand building needs, and I think we ought to just be upfront. Now, is it easy? No, because money is a finite item, and it affects everybody's tax bill. But anyway,
Thanks, Jack.
sorry. Go on and on.
Nilda, I also will be bringing a couple projects that I know that we can do more cheaply if we do them right now, that might go through the summer just because of time to implement them. And so I'll be bringing those to another board meeting to you in the future.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so we're getting through the reports. Okay, we're up to, old business, plan for meeting board goals. You have an attachment, 7A, in your packet.
It's actually coming around.
The board goals.
Yeah.
And has the goal statement, action steps that we have developed to try to meet the goal statement. And part of what we'll be doing as we move along here and reviewing our board retreat stuff, and also, the budget reflection part is to come up with additional ways that we can either look at these the same way or differently in order to make sure that we are monitoring the progress. Anything you want to add to that, Bill?
Well, you had asked me, you and I and Charlie talked about in our board prep meeting about topics for board education. So I made a quick list that I just passed around to everyone, that I was gonna ask everyone to take 3 or 4 minutes right now. Don't perseverate over any one. But using one as the most important, and I think there are 12 items here, so 12's the least important. If there's something there you we'd not like to know about. But we had talked about, Jack, you and I had talked about board education, about how things operate in the district. So I was wondering if I could
There's
serve.
15.
What?
15 items.
There's 15, thank you.
There's 15 items.
Thank
Not
you.
counting other.
Thank you. If there's something else, you could write it on there, so 1 through 15. 1 being the most important for you, you would like to learn about how this works in the district. Jack, you had brought a time to say we had educational sessions to do things for how does this actually happen in Maple Run? And you had said that. So I thought, Nilda and Charlie and I said, let's put together a list and just survey the board real quickly. Great, thank you so much. Nilda and Jack, I'll probably bend your ear because this is part of what you and I had seen last spring. But at the next board meeting, we'll have a report back, or I'll send it probably before then. We'll just do a collective tally of all this and start thinking about ways we can have education sessions for the board.
And for Carly and Joanne, would it be possible to send
Thank you for reminding. Aaron, if you can make a note to make sure we ask Carly and Joanne to do the same thing. Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, next item is board retreat, brainstorm discussion topics. So we have our date set. Do we have our location yet?
Aaron?
The Greg's at the Hard Act.
So we're up at the Hard Act at the ski lodge.
Okay, thank you.
And that is when?
It's May 8th.
Yeah.
And we'll be starting probably 5:15, 5:30. And I think Aaron sent out a questionnaire about if there were any dietary issues.
Yeah. So any particular topics folks would like us to cover, embellish on, start from scratch on? Don't all speak at once.
The only thing that comes to mind for me, like I would like to hear, I feel like, there's disconnect when you're in a larger organization from the board to the people in the schools doing the work, and it'd be neat to just hear directly. I'm sure people have lots of ideas of what policies and things we could be doing better to support them. I don't know if there's a way to integrate existing staff into the board retreat who aren't necessarily the existing leaders in the school.
Good idea. We can also incorporate those folks into some of the educational sessions too. You know, they could present areas that they are either responsible for or are considered experts in that field or area. I think one of the things that's important to me is sort of, and I never can figure out the right words to use this, but sort of board dynamics or board discussion, organization processes, you know, to make sure that we're all doing things the way each other expects us to do, and to be able to, in some ways, go back to basics about certain processes. I don't have a specific example off the top of my head right this second, but I feel like we have quite a few newer board members, and we could probably all benefit from some refresher information regarding, you know, sort of board organizational process. It doesn't sound like I want it to sound, but I talked to Bill about using perhaps the Vermont School Board Association as one of the resources to help us get through some of the retreat, because they have dealt with a lot of issues from a lot of other school districts, and perhaps have some reports or some presentations that they could give us once we come up with our list. I think of things like, you know, sort of a quick refresher with Robert's rules. I think of how does a board member request something to be on the agenda? How does somebody decide what they need to forward to the superintendent? What, you know, things that are very basic in many, many ways, but maybe we don't all know the answers because we may have never experienced them. Am I too basic in this thought process?
No.
Thank you. The other thing we need to do, and is if we have to show agreement or disagreement. If a question is asked of the board and the board doesn't say anything, I tend to assume that you agree, and perhaps you don't, you just haven't said anything about it. And I think we have to resolve that a little bit, you know, because it's hard to just, you know, we can just say, well, nobody said no, or nobody disagreed with us, and yet really nobody said anything isn't necessarily an agreement. So that's something to bear in mind also. If you folks come up with some items that you'd like to see on a board retreat, because I mean, this should have some sort of theme to it, but we can have several different topics. And you know, if we consider a theme of being back to basics, we can have a lot in it. If we consider a theme of, you know, budgets, we have a whole nother way of looking at that. So, but we also have other items on this agenda that will address that. I'm rambling because nobody's talking, and I'm assuming that you're agreeing with me because you haven't disagreed.
I agree.
I think that's a safe assumption.
Amanda agrees.
I appreciate you saying that, folks. So, you know, as I said, if you have items that you'd like to see on it, send them along to me and Bill, and otherwise we're gonna try to orchestrate this as best we can to cover what we see as the needs of the board. All right. Next item, I guess, is old business item C. We need a motion to, appoint the candidate that we interviewed for, school board for representative for the town for the 1 year remaining, on the open position. And her name is, help me with her name.
Nakuma Pajeski.
Thank you. Who would like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor of the motion, so, I need. Joanna isn't here. Mary Ann,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Hilda votes yes. Okay, so I'll give her a call once the meeting is adjourned and welcome her and send her to the central office, contact somebody at the central office so that she can make an appointment to get set up with all that she needs. Is that okay, Bill?
Yes, have her call Aaron and we'll go over there.
Okay. And then the next item on the agenda is budget reflection. So you received in your packet a couple items on the, you have the report that Bill wrote, that he emailed us. You have the editorial that MRUSD Lynn wrote, and you have the letter that Bill wrote sort of in response to that editorial. Did it get in the paper?
Yes, it was in there yesterday.
Thank you. So we have, sort of all that thought process. We also have, the fact that we need to look at the budget process and the budget, everything sooner rather than later, because as everyone has commented that has written anything about it, we're not gonna get this break again. We're gonna have to do something that, shows some efficiencies that, may or may not be popular efficiencies, but we need to look at everything to determine that we have done our best to reduce the budget a significant amount and also make sure that children are not affected. Commentary?
Give me a moment to think.
Say that again?
I started talking before I had a good thought form, so give me a moment.
Okay. Well, while his brain is gearing up, does anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
I would just say that we really gotta look at everything, like top to bottom in terms of what, one of the reasons that we kept level services this year, Act 127 had an impact on that. There was also concern just about the fact that the biggest chunk of the pie to cut was personnel, and I think folks who spoke to us on the budget got a little sick of us harping on the fact that we would have to be cutting personnel, but really we should look at, personnel's what, 76%?
Yeah.
So that, well, we know that's taking up a lot, but there's 24% other that we really need to, like, if we can save $500,000 somewhere, then that should be something that we should consider, and it's going to require looking at our policies and procedures and seeing what exists because we haven't changed it in a long time and what can be made more efficient.
Right, and there's a good segue to what I wanted to say. There's a very specific policy D06, which is minimal and optimal district-wide class sizes. And the last time it was reviewed, I believe, was 2017. And if you read it, it basically says that the board will work with a superintendent, but it doesn't have any real specifics in it. And I think it's a really important policy that we need to look at very carefully and perhaps consider, putting some numbers or some type of parameter in the policy that directs, how many certain classes can be held if there's three offerings at 3 different schools, or different things like that, stuff that's beyond me. I don't even know how to think through what the all the nuances could be, but there's, we have a lot of teachers, a lot of students, a lot of facility, a lot of square feet that we can use to our advantage to try to build efficiencies, and I think it's really important to look at that. I don't think it's the first thing we look at. I think it's something that we bear in mind as we're working through some of those efficiency processes. And Bill, as you work through some of that stuff with your leadership team, looking at how we can, as I said, get some efficiencies in the process, then we can maybe backtrack and indicate in policy format what might be the right metrics to put in there.
Yeah, no, we've been talking about that, Nilda, so thank you for saying that. I think one of the other things we're gonna have to start thinking about is, we have kept the Maple Run system pretty much the Maple Run system before it merged. Most of the merger that we've done and the efficiencies we have found have been on what I would say non-instructional places. There have been some instructional places where we've combined, but not many. And we may have to think about how we service kids and where we service kids. And that's gonna be a tough discussion for our community, but I think we have to start talking about that. And I need the board to support that work, because we need to start thinking about, is the system we have the best system for the students? So, and at an efficient rate that taxpayers can afford. Because what I'd hate to have is us to lose the budget and then us to be forced to make those decisions. As many of our districts around Vermont, they're doing it in 2 weeks. So they're just looking at the bottom line. And I'd rather have us have a thoughtful conversation of that with our community about how we do that.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. So can we expect you to bring forward some thoughts, or?
If the board would like us to start thinking about that, we would do that. And, there's some of those that range in different areas, and talk about how that impacts, if that's something the board would like.
Is that the pleasure of the board? That's a question.
I think so, yes.
Yes, thank you. I'm seeing yeses in your faces.
Yes.
I think it's very necessary. Go ahead, Charlie.
I would have just two requests based on that. Is any decisions we make should have as much as much concrete information, information behind it. Because I would hate to be like, oh, double class sizes, because that'll be great, and just be like, just obviously not knowing what I'm talking about.
Right.
So we need the information and well researched data to help make the decision. And the other question I have is, Neil mentioned D06. I'm curious if there are any other old policies that just have sort of sat around untouched by the board for years that might be useful being revisited as well.
We need to go through that and look at that. The ones that would have direct monetary. I mean, everyone would say every policy has a monetary impact, but what are those that are direct to some of those budgetary, as we put together the fiscal system and look at preparing a budget for FY26. So if that's something else the board would like us to look at as a leadership team, of ones we'd want the board to review, I'd be glad to receive that direction.
Is that the pleasure of the board?
Yes.
There's at least a couple yeses.
At least a couple of yeses.
I think I don't think you have any no's, is that correct? I think everybody sees some value in this.
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we
Okay,
can,
that's your directive, Bill.
all right, I got it. I hear you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to turn the agenda over to Charlie Brooks, our vice chair, to go through the rest.
Okay. So next is new business. Item 8A is the FY23 audit, and I'm looking for a motion to accept the fiscal year 2023 audit as presented.
I'll make that move.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
All right, and for discussion, I'm gonna turn it over to Bran.
Yes. Hi there. So if you look at the KBS letter to the school board, which is attached in your board packet, on page 3, the last sentence on there that says, "We do not express an opinion or provide any assurances on it." That is the key to the audit, saying there was no findings and nothing to call out, so we were in complete compliance with them. Yes.
Yay!
Right? So, but going into the financials, if you want me to, yes? Okay, perfect. So you'll be able to see on page 5, you'll see that we ended with $2,152,186 that went into the capital reserve fund, which Bill put in that slideshow that we just watched a little while ago. And the reasoning behind some of that surplus is because we had multiple unfilled positions that we weren't able to fill last year, as well as services that we had for students that we wanted to get into outside services that we couldn't get them into those services. And what else?
I would go to the very last page.
Okay, and the last page, yes, thank you, Martha. So on the very last page of the entire audit is a summary of the audit results and showing that we're doing great. There were no significant deficiencies disclosed during the audit of the financial statements of the Maple Run Unified School District. There were no instances of non-compliance material to the financial statements of the Maple Run Unified School District were disclosed during the audit. There were no significant deficiency disclosed in the independent report on compliance for each major program and on internal control over compliance required by the uniform guidance. The auditor's report on compliance for the major federal award programs for the MRUSD expresses an unmodified opinion. That means that there weren't any issues at all. And then there were no audit findings required to be reported in accordance with 2 CFR section 200.516A. And we were determined to be a low-risk auditee. And then the findings, there were no findings. And the findings in question cost major federal award programs, there were no findings on that as well. So we did great. Yes. Are there any questions?
Any other discussion or questions?
I just want to commend Bree and Martha for the work they've done in leading us in our fiscal services. And it's been, of the 5 years I've been here, this is the same report which we've heard, which is how good they are. And I'm sure that will continue. But thank you for the leadership in fiscal services.
Thank you.
If there's no other discussion, then we can put it to a vote to accept the fiscal year 23 audit as presented. Jack? Are you voting yes or no?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
I was reading something.
Charlie is yes. Mary Ann?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Nelda?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
All right, that's, Fairfield was half, so that's, it's what, 6.5 yeses? Yeah, no's.
Thank you.
And then item 8B is the 2024-2025 school calendar, which is attachment 8B in the package. And
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Thank you, Charlie. As I let the board know back in January or early February, I don't remember which meeting it was, but it was about that time, that the superintendents, and as you know, we try to somewhat align our calendars, that we agreed this year we would align it to the day. And what we came down to was that the Grand Isle Franklin would get it exactly the same day, because there's a few differences in Chittenden County, but I wanna say it's 1 or 2 days. So it's almost amazing that in 16 supervisory unions in the state, we had pretty much the same calendar to the day. I will say the ones that are out is some cultural days that need to be needed because of certain populations in certain locales, that it's important for them to be out those days. So besides that, and I know it's just 2 days in October, that's not the same, and it's for 3 districts amongst the 16, we all agreed that was important for their communities. So it's actually gonna help with staffing our schools. I see some staff members right over here and and principals, and you deal with it when one school is closed, one district is closed, that we have staff members who live there that have young kids, and we're open, or vice versa, and that's why we did this. So it's quite an amazement. We're actually trying to show as a model to the state, hoping the state will think about one calendar for the state, because it would really help us. So I'm giving you this as information. I don't need you to adopt it. It's never been the history of the board to approve it. But I wanted to make sure I showed you. This will be going out. I know there's a message already in the queue to go out tomorrow morning to families, parents, teachers. Here's the calendar, because we've been getting questions asking for it. I don't know if you have any questions about it. It's pretty similar to what our former calendar was.
I have a question,
Yeah.
not relating to next year's, but rather this year's. Do you know offhand when our school year ends this year?
So if we don't have any more snow days, and we almost had one yesterday, we will end the Monday after graduation. Without looking at my phone, I don't remember that date.
The 15th.
That date, what?
Oh, sorry. The 17th.
So Charlie was correct, it's June 17th. Okay. I never guarantee we won't have a snow day until April break, but with climate warming, that may be pushed to April 1st, but
And does that count the makeup day for April 8th?
yes, it does. Yep. As you may have seen, I'll put in a little side, Chittenden, Franklin, Grand Isle, all the schools closed. We put out our announcement of Franklin, Grand Isle, and Chittenden County is joining us, and Addison County is going with a half day. And I believe most of the schools in Lamar County, I look at my colleague, we both live in Lamar County, are half day schools.
Are 8th grade graduation days set for this year?
Yes.
I think so, but don't, unless you got it in your head, Stacy, when it is? 13th.
5:30.
6:30 at SATEC, 6 at Fairfield. We go 5:30,
Same
6
day.
at 6:30. And we'll be asking for folks who would like to attend and be a board rep at those graduations along with BFA. But we'll get to that later on.
Any other questions about the school calendar? Moving on to other business, we have the warrants. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as authorization and signature for any individual board members participating remotely. Anyone with the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the warrants.
Okay.
I'll second that.
You got 2 seconds. Any discussion or questions? No? Then I'll just go down the list. Jack?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Charlie's yes. Mary Ann?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Nelda?
Yes.
And Jessica?
Yep.
All right, that passes. And then we're on to superintendent report.
Great, thanks, Charlie. I've got 3 things for the board. First, as required in our procedures, I wanted to let you know that on May 31st, there'll be a trip to Montreal from students at BFA. According to the procedure, I let the board know that when we're taking trips there out of the country. So it's a 1-day trip up and back. And I want to let you know that that's happening. That's being led by Christy Waite and Bruce Pollard, and Kat Samanto are taking that as well. So they'll be up there for the day, and I've approved that. The second thing I wanted to let you know about is that if you didn't do it this past week, and Charlie and I we were talking about it earlier this week, but there were some great music performances at all our elementary schools. And then they came together for a day on Friday. It was in the Messenger. Bridget did a nice job of covering that. But they brought all the elementary programs together for the day at BFA, and I was in there for only about a half hour, but it sounded terrific between the orchestra and the band. I never made the choir, I have to admit. I tried to find them, but
They're in the pack.
I knew they were in the pack. My schedule is what stopped me from finding them, not
Fair
the
enough.
actual location, but thank you, Zach.
Busy building center.
Yeah. No, you're fine. And then the last thing I want to talk to you about is one of the things we've been talking about is, in the board goals, is monitoring the work of the school district. And how do we monitor the 5 goals? And I really would like to work together on that on May 8th at our retreat where we're talking about items. So I've got some ideas and thoughts on that. But until we get there, there's some things that I think we can bring you as reports. One of the things that we did the initial calendar for reports last year is we had a lot of time for strategic plan coming here in April, but we're not quite on that timeline. So in lieu of that, one of the things that I know that some board members have some interest in is a curriculum update. It's been a while since John's talked to you about that. And Jess, it was great, you actually said, can we bring others, because he'll be joined by our instructional coaches, giving you a report on where we are with the curriculum. At the same, so that would be April 3rd. On April 17th, we will bring you the strategic plan. There's a community forum next Tuesday in this location right here for the community to give us comment on the strategic plan, but it's getting pretty close to a final stage. And then we'll bring that to the board on the 17th, present that to you, and then on the 1st of May, we'll be looking to see if you can adopt that. On May 1st, we usually do it about the 1st of May every year, is bring you a staffing report. How many people do we have on staff, but also how many people are returning for the next year, where do we have openings, and some of the professional learning that the staff have been doing. And we haven't really had a chance, I was talking to Noah about this today, I don't have something for May 15th yet, but we can be talking about that and thinking about it. But those are the reports that we're thinking about bringing. And the students already talked about the award they had, and I think that's it, just those 3 items.
Board announcements?
I've got a question. I don't know if it's an announcement or not, but being new, I don't know what is not right to ask. But I'm wondering if I'm interested in the district curriculum to make sure that we're meeting the district goals, and I don't know where to find those, if we can get a hold of the district curriculum.
Yeah, I'm wondering if John can bring you, see how to do that when he brings
Okay.
his report on the 3rd. Would that work, Mary
Sure.
Ann?
Yeah.
And then have access for whatever you'd like to look at.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
And on the other side, in terms of board announcements, just on a personal thing, my daughter got her first solo during the chorus concert, and she killed it. And there's only this meeting, one more before the city school play of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is April 12th and 13th, and I highly, it's gonna be really good.
Okay, and I forgot to say two things, if I could add in, do the play. Next week, the one act play is performing at the PAC as before they go to one act competition, so it's on, I believe it's on Wednesday and Friday next week at 7, so you may wanna go see that. Maybe it's just Wednesday during the day for students, and we'll have to look, we'll get you that schedule. And the last thing I forgot to say is I will not be at the next board meeting. I will be away that week. I've talked to Charlie and Nilda about that, John will be here, and I will not be at the next board meeting. I just want to let the board members know that.
Go easy on me.
We'll have the
Please.
hard-hitting questions then.
Next is agenda for future meetings. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add to the agenda for the future? No, so we don't need an executive session, am I correct, Nilda? Yeah, so I just want to thank Dr. G, Stacy, and City School for hosting and delivering us delicious snacks. And it is 7:23 and we are adjourned.
Thank you.